Hey, everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod to talk about Michigan State's upcoming matchup against the number 14 Arkansas Razorbacks in East Lansing on Saturday night. Before we start, stop your podcast player, leave a 5-star written review, or hit the like button on YouTube right now. We appreciate it. It'll help the algorithms lead other Spartan fans to the show. We'd really appreciate it. For those of you who are subscribers and got the wonky audio today, I apologize. I fixed that, so if you want to reload it, you can. It's just the first 20 seconds or so is going to be kind of messed up, so that's on me. And I won't go through the long explanation of how it happened, but it did. So let's talk about the game. And with the erosion of the multi-team events like the Maui Invitational and others, well, we're starting to see the emergence of home and home matchups with non-conference top level teams, which, we've talked about before. This Saturday night's doozy is one of those games. John Calipari apparently reached out to Tom Izzo. He's bringing his loaded Razorbacks up into the Breslin to take on the Spartans. Both teams are 1-0, but it's probably fair to say that Michigan State looked the shakier of the two teams in their opener as they struggled a little bit against Colgate in the opener. Meanwhile, Arkansas handled their opening night against Southern University. Obviously, for both teams, this will be a much bigger challenge for both of them.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me that this game is being played at Breslin because for so long in his time at Kentucky, John Calipari was vehemently opposed to home and homes. I believe he killed the Indiana series because he didn't want to. He was trying to insist that they should play at a neutral site every year, and IU wouldn't go for it. And yet here he is, and apparently he was the one who kind of was actively seeking this game.
Right.
He and Izzo have a good relationship, but it's interesting how the dynamics and the incentives and all of that has changed as we've moved, as you say, moved away from these multi-team events. And, he doesn't have the easy annual neutral site game as part of the Champions Classic anymore because, of course, he's moved jobs.
Right, yeah.
And he left Kentucky last year, before last season. Basically, it seemed almost one step ahead of the posse, which is hard to believe, but you have to understand Kentucky basketball. And
Can you understand it?
I think I understand that they're insane, but I think that only one title in whatever he put up there, 14 years, 13 years,
15,
something
14,
like that.
Yeah, you're right. It's around there, yeah.
That's not enough. And there weren't enough Final Fours. And I think the other thing is that the trend was not his friend later in his tenure. That's not to say he didn't have some good teams, but he also had some disappointing ones. He missed the tournament during the COVID year, I believe. He had a team heading into last season, 2 years ago, rather, his last season at Kentucky, that everybody, including yours truly, thought was going to be as good as anyone in the country. Had a great transfer class, had their usual kind of freshman talent, all of that. It looked fantastic on paper. And what ended up being produced was anything but fantastic.
Yeah, right.
And so that's what led to him leaving. He landed at Arkansas, which really, that whole cycle was triggered by, of all people, Andy Enfeld at USC, who left that job, again, one step ahead of the posse, to take the job at SMU.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Musselman then gets out of Arkansas because he's in trouble there. Again, despite a lot of success in that job. He had a bad last year, but more than just the on-court results, there was a lot of chaos around that program.
Right.
He leaves for Los Angeles. That creates an opening in Fayetteville, which Calipari ended up taking. Now, I'm not sure that Arkansas was his first choice, but there were rumors about him approaching other schools to gauge their interest. But it's a good landing place for him because Arkansas is one of the few SEC schools besides Kentucky where I think, football matters there a great deal as well. There's no doubt about that. But that is a place with a deep basketball tradition, and basketball matters. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And so a guy like John Calipari, who had never coached, at a place with a really powerful football program. I mean, Kentucky is as close as he'd come. Remember, he had been at UMass and then he had been at Memphis.
Yeah.
Those are basketball first places. And Kentucky, despite having a good football program in terms of interest level, that's a basketball first place too. Arkansas is probably the closest he's gotten to that Big Ten model of football and basketball, at least at some places being, close to equitable, but football still probably outweighing basketball a bit. But it's good enough. The support level is great. Facilities are fine. They care about it. And obviously, he's had no problem attracting talent. Last year, his first year there on the court was a rough ride. I think people expected a lot of success. He brought some guys, several guys with him from Lexington to give him a good, and there were some guys left over who had been at Arkansas under Musselman. He had a good amount of talent. Added some other portal guys as well, but including John L. Davis, who was one of the FAU guys that did not follow Dusty May to Ann Arbor. But they really struggled. And they only got into the NCAA tournament largely on the backs of the SEC having such a great conference rating. They were
carried across the line. Yeah.
Oh, right. Only 8-10 in the league. Split 2 SEC tournament games. There was no reason to expect much of them. Their first round matchup was a classic 8-9 game with them facing an underachieving Kansas. Well, they beat Kansas. Then they got to face the 1 seed, St. John's. They beat St. John's in a great game. I remember that game.
Yeah, it was a great game.
And then in the Sweet 16, they pushed Texas Tech all the way to overtime before losing by 2. So they figured it out late. But that doesn't change the fact that it was 22-14 is an okay season. It's not a bad season from a general perspective, but in terms of expectations and all the rest, not what I think he or Arkansas fans would have anticipated. So that's what he's coming off of in terms of what he's done at Fayetteville. But and I think it sets things up an interesting perspective, I suppose, for this year, which is, that last year at Arkansas looked a lot like his late period at Kentucky. He did that. He had similar seasons a few times at Kentucky, especially recently, where they underachieved most of the year and then kind of put it together late to at least look respectable in the postseason. But not really close to a national title type of team. So that sets it up for this year because I think on paper, I think they're better than they were a year ago. We'll go into the reasons why in a bit, but will they actually meet those? I think they're picked 3rd in the SEC in the preseason. So that means you're expected to be a title contender. And can they do that? Does this team make good on all of that potential? Heading into this year, as was usually the case in Lexington, and honestly is now the case most places in America, there was a lot of offseason turnover, but he does have 4 key rotation guys back. So he's got a core to build around in that way. So I would say it's maybe not quite as tilted toward the annual reinvention as many of his Kentucky teams were. So you add to that core 3 highly regarded freshmen and a couple of transfer additions, and you get kind of a team that's seen as an SEC contender, seen as a potential top 10 team nationally. You mentioned they're ranked 14th now. In their opener, they played Southern. They were very strong offensively. They scored 109 points, but they gave up, maybe it was 100. Yeah, 109 points, and they gave up 77. He was not happy with the defense.
Sure.
I would say overall, this is a very athletic team, good length and good depth. So it's reasonable to expect a very serious challenge for Michigan State. Couple statistical record notes to keep in mind, which I thought were interesting. Best as I could tell, and I think I've got this right, that Tom Izzo is 2-3 lifetime versus Calipari. He did win the most recent meeting back in the 22 Champions Classic.
That was the Malik Hall overtime game.
Malik Hall and Madi Sissoko.
Yeah.
Madi Sissoko had a great game. Malik, one of two he had. The other one was against Gonzaga that year. And Malik Hall, had some big makes late in overtime and in regulation, I believe. Here's the one that grabs me, though. In the something's got to give kind of
I know you're going up with this one.
Izzo's 83-1 in November home games. We know when the loss came 2 years ago against James Madison. That record is going to be put to the test in this one. Now, I think, look, part of it is that obviously he's a really good coach who's had really good teams, right? The other part is that kind of what we've been talking about with the advent of the multi-team events on neutral sites and just neutral sites in general. You haven't had many good teams willing to come into Breslin,
right,
to play home and home. And if they have happened, it hasn't tended to be in November. So I'm not, 83-1 is 83-1, right? It's impressive no matter how you want to slice and dice that up. But it is worth mentioning, historically, they have not played games like this. Like I remember, what was it? Cassius's senior year, they played Duke in Breslin and got blitzed. Yeah. Well, that game came in December.
Yep, just like this year will be.
Right.
The Duke game
so this is a unique one in that way in terms of when it's coming. But it's a hell of a challenge. I mean, Arkansas looks every bit of legit on paper. So Michigan State's going to have to step it up.
Well, I can definitely say as a season ticket holder, you much rather have these games than playing Elkhorn State or, Northwestern State or whatever. It's just more interesting. It's more, you're going to be in the game. There's actually be, more likely to be a full house. And so I'm very excited about these things. This, and of course the Duke game. Duke is more payback from the Champions Classic, that kind of whatever, that weird thing that happened with Coach K. But anyway, this is certainly going to be a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to it. And it is, a big challenge, especially playing these games so early. I mean, that used to be the thing. You play the Champions Classic used to be, if I recall, was the first game of the season.
Yes,
I think it was. Yeah, it was. I don't know if it was. I guess it would have been opening day, right?
Yeah.
And then they started. Easing a game in before, and then sort of moved further. Maybe
I looked back, and I think I've got this right. I think the game against Kentucky 3 years ago, I think, was on November 5th. So that tells you.
Yeah.
And they have shifted it. Now, this season, it's game number 4.
Right.
For MSU.
Well, and just like I think the aircraft carrier game was early too. I mean, I think they've done, and I think that was just a reflection of these teams, these top teams, their willingness to sort of play these games if neither team has a lot of chance to get rolling. I don't know. Maybe that's just me just imagining it, but that if things don't turn out well, you say, well, it was the first game and the fan base doesn't get all crazy. But now, you're playing exhibition games against these top teams. So the fan base is just going to get the way they're going to get, I suppose.
But it's still, look, from a Michigan State perspective, yeah, you could say, well, if they get blown out, everybody will be up in arms, and what does that do to their confidence? Blah blah blah. I really think the downsides are pretty limited. I talked about this with Jack Ebling yesterday on his radio show. I can't recall too many times when Michigan State has won a game like this early on, and as you say, oftentimes it's come in the Champions Classic, but where they've won a big game early and then went on to not have a very good year. When they win, pretty much mark it down, they're going to have a really good year.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean winning a title necessarily, but they're going to have a very strong team.
Yeah, I feel like maybe the Baylor game would be the one a couple years ago. That was
that came toward the. They were desperately trying to.
Yeah, that was, I guess, a peak.
The season had already nosedived at that point. I wouldn't count that one.
Yeah, that was after the 0-2 Big Ten started.
Yeah,
right.
Even you go back to that the year before that narrow Gonzaga loss, and then the win over Kentucky, and I think they had the win over Villanova that year too to start out the year, and then they kind of hit the skids for a while in the Big Ten when injuries hit, all of that. They struggled in the PK 85 because of injuries, but that team still ended up in the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
And were pretty good at the end of the year. So that's what I mean. Typically, if they're good at this stage, they don't tend to disappoint, really. On the other hand, though, there have been plenty of times where Michigan State has not looked good. Just go to last year. They did not look good against Kansas. That was a struggle. And we know what happened with the season. So a loss here, my point being, I don't think there's much downside to playing these games. I think you learn a lot about your team, and you can identify areas that you got to get better. The team sees it for themselves and not just being told you got to get better here, and here. They understand it better because they're experiencing it. And so I just don't see a lot of downside. I'm not going to lose my mind no matter what.
Yeah,
other than if they win and they look good, it will be, historically, that has been an indicator that Michigan State's going to have a very good year.
Right.
But the converse doesn't mean they won't either. They still may have a good year.
So what you're saying is we should all overreact to this game no matter what happens.
Right. Yeah.
That's what the show specializes in, is overreactions.
Yeah.
Actually, this is the thing I've always appreciated most about the show. But of course, on the schedule, we do not overreact too much. We kind of stay more level. The season's a roller coaster enough without us adding to it. All right. So let's talk about someone who's not going to take you on a roller coaster, and that'd be the Brothers Just Gutters. If you want good work done, they're just going to do it. You're not going to have to worry about it, not going to stress about it. No ups and downs. They're going to get up and down the ladder for you, so you don't have to worry about it. They'll get up and clean out those gutters. They'll replace them, they'll repair them. Whatever needs to be done, they'll take care of it. Fantastic pricing, 10% off as a listener of the show or a viewer, just by mentioning Final Four in your estimate. And of course, the place you always go, as I tell you every week, is go to your support page at tffinots.com, tiffnots.com/support. There you can find ways to get a hold of Greg or Kurt, depending on whether you're on the west or the east side of the state. And unlike those of you who are in the UP, you guys are out of luck, I guess. So you need to move down to the south, below the bridge with the trolls, the rest of us. All right, so we're going to talk about the opposing lineup and then eventually the player that Rod picks as a player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter. We'll begin with Darius Acuff, who's a name that I think people will recognize if you've been listening to our recruiting or shows earlier, where he was definitely a target, but never really in it for Michigan State. 6'3" point guard from Detroit Cass Tech. Won a state title as a sophomore. He played his last 2 years in Florida at the IMG Academy. An elite recruit, ends up in Arkansas playing for Calipari. His first game this season, he scored 22 points as a freshman, 8 of 13 from the floor, 3 of 5 from 3, 4 assists, 2 turnovers. So not too bad for an opening night for a freshman.
Yeah. It's the second highest scoring total for a freshman in his first game in Arkansas history, behind Patrick Beverly, who had 29 in his first game. And, you know, Pat Beverly's had a long NBA career. Darius Acuff, his freshman year, he was good. His sophomore year, he exploded. And that was a weird recruitment. It was one that MSU didn't offer for quite a while, which is really unusual for them. Usually with an in-state kid, they're early, if anything. And they weren't on him. And it just kind of went on. And finally they did offer, but I honestly, in retrospect, I don't think it was going to matter. This guy was hell-bent on playing for Calipari. If Calipari was still at Kentucky, Darius Acuff would be at Kentucky. It's got nothing to do with Arkansas. It has to do with Calipari. That's fine. You know,
it's rational.
Yeah. He's a one and done guy. I'm going to be shocked if he doesn't leave for the draft. You know, you could argue that for an NBA point guard, 6'3" is not super ideal. You'd like him a little bit bigger these days, but he does have like a 6'6" wingspan. So I don't think he's going to have issues there. He's a very good athlete. He is very skilled. He's got everything you want in an NBA level point guard. And I think he's going to have a great year. And honestly, when I said at the outset that on paper, I think this Arkansas team is better than they were a year ago, he's the number one reason why. Because last year they really did not have a true point guard that I thought was of the caliber that allows you to win big. They've got that now. Darius Acuff is that kind of guy. And, I got to believe coming home to his home state, he's probably going to be pretty jacked
I
to
would
play
think so.
at Michigan. So I'm expecting him to deliver a very strong game. I think it's going to be very challenging for Jeremy Fears, but I also think Jeremy Fears is a guy who likes challenges and likes to be in the spotlight. So I expect he's going to step up and give Acuff a hell of a battle. But it should be a really good matchup between two very talented young point guards. The one criticism I could offer is the usual one with young guards, especially young guards who could score. Sometimes the decision-making isn't ideal. And I used to see that from him when I watched him play AAU a little bit with the family. There would be times where, he'd force a shot, just not feeling the rhythm of the game, kind of taking it through a good contest, those types of things. But man, when you got the talent, the physical tools he's got, you'll take that kind of negative because it's likely to only hurt you so much.
Do you think the coaching staff, now they recruited him, I suppose they watched a decent amount of his tape and watched him play. Do you think that helps him a little bit in game planning for him? Like, hey, these are the tendencies, these are the ways we can sort of bait him into doing the wrong thing, or do they just, you think, just look at the Southern or just like last year's Arkansas team for concepts?
You mean for Michigan State?
Yeah, for Michigan State. Like, does it help? You think much?
Marginally, maybe. You've always got to remember that what he's going to be asked to do at Arkansas is almost certainly very different than what he was doing at IMG or with the family. Sure. So you start with that. He's also got very different teammates to play off of. So that's different. I don't think it hurts that they know him. They know his game, but I just don't know how much it helps.
Yeah. I always felt like, in baseball, especially, you see these players coming from the minor leagues and they get called up and you're like, wow, why has this guy been in, Toledo for so long? And then after about 2 weeks, the rest of the league figures it out and you just throw him a curveball. I can't hit it. And then the guy hits like, 100.
Look, absolutely. Here's the thing. It's also, it's one thing for Michigan State's coaches to have an understanding of that, but Michigan State's players, I'm trying to think if they'd have anybody who they probably got. Actually, come to think of it, there may be some guys, it's possible that Ward might have played against him in AAU. It's possible. Oh, because they were both on the EYBL circuit. Jordan Scott wasn't. Yeah. So, and then the year before, Kurtang was not on the same circuit because Darius played up with 17s even as a 16-year-old. Yeah, there's probably not anybody on Michigan State's roster who's played against him.
Yeah, okay.
So, how much can it really matter?
All right, we'll move on then to DJ Wagner. He was an elite recruit back in 2023, expected to be a one and done. Glad that didn't happen since he's still playing at Arkansas right now. Starting out at Kentucky, of course, following Cal. He averaged 11.2 points a game last year, shot 40, 30, and 82, almost 3.5 assists per game to 2.2 turnovers a game. And so he's now going to move more to the shooting guard position now that Acuff's there, I think. And he had 8 points in the opener on 2 of 7 from 3.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a benefit for him. It's funny. His father, people may remember this name from way back in the early aughts, DeJuan Wagner, who was also really, really highly thought of. And that was in an era where guys would not go to college necessarily. They'd go straight to the NBA. And he didn't end up playing college basketball. His career didn't take off. This guy's grandfather, Milt Wagner, was a really good player at Louisville. He was part of a national championship team there, and he had an NBA career too, I believe. But DJ has been a lot like his dad, where super, super hyped. And it didn't, I'm not saying he was a disaster, but these first 2 years, one at Kentucky, one at Arkansas, he's still there as a junior. So what does that tell you? When you're expected to be that kind of guy and you're still around for your junior year, that tells you, well, it hasn't gone quite according to plan. Doesn't mean that it can't get back on the beam. I think the biggest thing, though, for him is that he's got to shoot the jumper better. 30% from 3 last year. They're going to ask him to play much more off the ball. He'll still be on the ball at times because Acuff's not going to play 40 minutes. But I think it should benefit him, at least in theory it should, that he doesn't have to worry about running the offense as much. He can just concentrate on being a scorer. But, the first night, 2 for 7 from 3, not a blazing start, but it's early.
Yeah.
I think that's going to make the difference. Look, he's 6'3", and if he can't be a true on-ball guy, then his NBA hopes really come down to him figuring out how to really bust threes.
Yeah.
And he hasn't done that yet. Interestingly, he does have some history with some MSU players, particularly Jeremy Fears. They played together on Team USA, and despite DJ being a super hyped top 5 kind of recruit, Jeremy Fears started ahead of him on that team for obvious reasons, I think, when you look at how those two careers have gone. One of them is a true point guard who makes other people better. The other isn't.
I'll let you figure out who it's who, listener. All right, so moving on then to Billy Richmond, 6'6" sophomore, averaging 5.7 points a game and 18 minutes a game as a freshman for Arkansas. He shot 52, 13, and 73. He had 6 points in the opener this year.
Yeah. When I think of Cal's teams that he's had at Kentucky, Billy Richmond's the kind of guy who fits a certain, and it's not to say they've all been this way, but Cal did have some teams that had a lot of athleticism, but struggled shooting the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And that tends to go along. If you are a super high level athlete, you're probably going to end up ranked highly. And so that would tend to comprise a decent amount of his classes at Kentucky were guys kind of like Billy Richmond. Again, the athleticism you can't question. He's not Colin Carr, but he's probably that next level. So really, really good. But it's not all going to come completely together until he can figure out how to shoot a little bit.
Yeah. 13 is no bueno, as I say. At the playing at the 4 would be Nick Pringle, 6'10", senior. He's making his tour of the SEC. He's played also at Alabama and South Carolina. Last year at South Carolina, he averaged 9.5 points a game, 6.3 rebounds a game, and he had 8 points and 8 rebounds in the opener against Southern.
Yeah, this is a guy who's in his 6th year of eligibility. If you remember that ruling that came out this offseason that if you played a year at JUCO, that didn't count. Well,
didn't count. It's like you never played.
Nick Pringle, it didn't count. So, as you say, he's at his 3rd SEC stop. He had good numbers last year, I think, at South Carolina. Good enough. I think the question mark, though, and you always wonder this, a guy who's pretty productive for a bad team, which they were.
Right.
And they've got a couple guys like this.
What does it mean? Yeah.
What's it going to mean? Now, Calipari is really high on his defense and his experience, obviously. And he was a decent start against Southern, 8-8. Can't complain about that. Physical and mental maturity because he's been around the block. All that should help. I think you're looking for Pringle to be a dirty work guy more than anything else. And I've got him at the 4. He probably is actually more of the 5 when I think about it because he's a little bit bigger than the next guy we'll talk about. But the bottom line is the same. They're going to ask him set picks, play defense, rebound, especially defensively, do all that, can provide a physical presence inside, do all that kind of stuff.
Get some garbage buckets when you can.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. It's not going to be glamour work for Nick Pringle.
Right. And finally at the 5, or however you want to define it, I guess you have Trayvon Brazil, 6'9" senior, 5th year guy. He's been Arkansas, but it's had a lot of injury issues, which is why he's in his 5th year. He had 25 and 11 in the opener after last season, averaging a little under 7 points a game and 5.5 rebounds a game. He shot 60, 36, and 53 last year. So obviously a good performance for him in the opening night.
Yeah. Brazil is I think he's the make or break guy for this team because I'm confident in Acuff. I think a lot of their other guys, you could sort of feel pretty decent about what you're likely to get out of them.
Mm-hmm.
But Brazil, it's more of a wild card in large part because you just don't know if he's going to stay healthy. If he stays healthy, I think there's good reason to believe he can have a very, very strong senior year. He's a skilled big kid, not really a bruiser, but a good athlete. He's long and he could shoot the ball and he can handle it even a little bit. So the potential's there for him to have a big season, but he's got to stay healthy. He's got to stay engaged. And if he does, that could be a big difference maker for this group.
Yeah. And the tricky thing too, with these opening night games, I don't know. Do you have any feel for how good Southern is? I mean, are they compared to Colgate?
Zero.
Exactly.
Zero.
And we don't know what their size is.
I would guess they're worse than Colgate just because I
think so too. Their conference is worse.
Their conference is much worse. And I have confidence in what Colgate rolls out year to year that they've been the best team in that conference for the last 7-8 years.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, that would be reasonable to assume, but how much of a difference that is, we don't know.
Yeah. And you know what, if he doesn't have the size matchups, maybe it's easy to get a bunch of rebounds and fire someone up. They are, of course, the ultimate directional school as just Southern University. All right, moving on then to reserves. We have Malik Thomas, 6'4" freshman wing. He's another elite recruit that Cal got. He had a great start against Southern where he scored 21 points off the bench. And so, he's another person that Michigan State's going to have to try and figure out a way to handle.
Yeah, they expect big things from him. And I think, look, if they don't get the kind of production out of Billy Richmond or a couple of other guys that they're hoping for, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that Thomas could eventually start this year. Sure. Despite not being a automatic starter, he is seen as a likely one and done as well because he's just a weapon offensively. Really got the complete package offensively. He can shoot from deep. He can take the ball to the basket and finish. He can play in the mid-range. He can really do it all. Again, the criticism is a similar one to the one we mentioned with Acuff. Every once in a while, he can get outside of himself in terms of the decisions he makes in shot selection, but he's a big-time talent. There's no questioning that.
And next is Isaiah Seeley, 6'7" wing, also a freshman. He had 12 points and shot 3 of 6 from the floor, and he was perfect from line, 6 of 6.
Yeah, again, another super athletic freshman. Probably not quite as developed in terms of his ball skills as Acuff and Thomas, but he's still going to be a factor. I think his versatility, good size at 6'7" for the wing, and his athletic ability is going to mean that he plays a significant role in their rotation all year long.
Then Malik Ewan, 6'10", 240-pound junior transfer, obviously a reserve in the center position. He scored 6 points, had 4 boards against Southern. Last season, he averaged 14.2 points and 7.6 rebounds a game for Florida State.
Right, and so the same question comes up with him as it did for Pringle. Okay, he put up really good numbers for Florida State, but they were awful.
Yeah.
So how does that translate? I think with this team, considering you got Pringle and Brazil already inside, it's unlikely that he's going to have any chance to match that same kind of production this year as what he had for Florida State. But he doesn't have to for him to be a really good addition. They need him to provide a physical presence inside off the bench because they really don't. They've got a freshman who's a big as well, but he didn't really play much. He had just cameo minutes in a blowout, which tells me that he's probably not ready for prime time. Right. So it's really Ewan I think he played like 17 or 18 minutes in that first game. So he's the guy, he's the backstop inside for Arkansas. And they need him to play well at both ends, but particularly I think defensively and on the boards. That's where they'd be looking for impact to start because Calipari, much like Tom Izzo, is a guy, and this might run contrary to people's perception of him if they don't pay close attention to his teams. He's a defense first coach.
Right.
His first catapult into the national spotlight was when he was coaching UMass, and UMass was a defense first team all the way. He had some ugly offenses, but they were still consistently very, very good because of how strong their defense was. And that's never changed. So Ewan's going to have to be a factor there off the bench for this team to reach their potential.
Yeah, I feel like his best Kentucky teams scored a lot off their defense, like off steals and tip balls and stuff like that. That's how because they were never, like you said, like a really smooth offensive team.
Rarely have they been great offensively. Yeah. That just hasn't been their thing.
Right. So finally, then to round everything out, we have Carter Knox. That's Carter with a K. He didn't play against Southern. He broke his toe at some point. So, I guess he must have been playing at Michigan State's practice facilities because he's got that, the foot injuries. He's 6'6" sophomore. He averaged 8.3 points a game last year, along with 3.3 rebounds. He shot 46, 35, and 80.
Yeah. And, there's I'm looking right now to see if there's been an update since I wrote this. There has not been. There's still no certainty as to whether he'll play or not. Right. I did read Calipari's quotes earlier this week. They did not sound optimistic that he would play in this game. So it seems to be doubtful that he will play, but we'll have to see. When healthy, this guy could be a starter. He might take that spot from Billy Richmond because he was a classmate of Richmond's. He's also a sophomore. But he was a little better offensively, 8.3 points, 3.3 boards, but he shot 46, 35, 80. So he's giving you a little more as a shooter than Richmond. And he might not be quite as good an athlete as Richmond, but he's still good athletically. NBA bloodlines. His brother plays in the NBA. So he's an important figure for this team to be sure. It's just a question of whether they have him Saturday night or not. And right now, we're recording this on Thursday afternoon, I would probably lean toward not expecting him to play.
Sure. All right. So then for the Arkansas team, who do you have as the player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter?
Darius Acuff. I think he's going to be the key. He was their second leading scorer in the opener, but as their point guard too, I think he's the key to this team. And he's the reason why I think they are going to be better than they were last season. So, yeah, he's the guy.
And it's my wife reminded me, please make sure you make it obvious who he is, because it's usually one of the first players we talk about. And then by the time we get to the end, I can't remember when you say what's the gutter. So Darius Acuff is the point guard for Arkansas. So he's the guy that is going to be, I guess you had to have someone you want to keep in the gutter. Probably having Jeremy Fears be the primary defender on him is probably the best, right?
You'd like your odds, right? If you're Michigan State, that's going to give you the best chance of limiting him.
All right, then moving on to the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. Who cleans the glass? Best segment. Remember, if you need your windows cleaned in the greater Grand Rapids area, you want to contact the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. Not only can they clean your windows, but they can also take care of the outside of your house with power washing. Super gentle on it. They get up on the ladders again, so you don't have to. And quite frankly, we know you're not going to get on the ladders to clean your windows outside your house anyway. But maybe it's not even your house. Maybe it's your business, anything else, any other sort of structure they can take care of, even the state capitol. They've done it all. So contact them today. Troy and his team will take great care of you. 15% off if you mention Final Four and get your estimate. And of course, as always, head on over to our support page at tffinots.com/support to find the necessary links to get a hold of the Squeegee Squad. You'll be glad you did do it today. All right, so I am up 1-0 after basically picking Jackson Kohler, and we'll do our snake draft. You get to pick first, and I can only imagine who you're going to pick as your first.
Jackson Kohler.
Shocking. And then I will take Cooper. And this is the thing. Because Ward didn't play it. I'm trying to figure out who's going to play the minutes and who's going to get it.
Yeah.
And I think you can go a lot of different ways here. And I don't think anything's wrong. I'm going to go with Scott. It's just somewhat different. Just because I think he had 5 rebounds, I think, the last game. I think he was tied with the team in second at rebounds. Aside, maybe it's third after Cooper. I think you could go Carr. You can go a lot of different directions. I'm just going with Scott because, I think it doesn't really matter much because you've got Kohler.
Yeah, I'm really torn because I do like Cam Ward, but I'm going to go with Cohen.
Yeah, you thought you were going to have to take
minutes,
Ward
just because of the minutes. Yeah,
I throw you a curveball here. We'll see if it pays off or if I.
Yeah, you're going off the page.
Going off script here. And that brings us to the 5 keys of the game, brought to you by Nudge Printing. And a couple cool things here, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see there's a new competition just for listeners of the show. So we are going to have a drawing for a free sweatshirt, hooded sweatshirt at Nudge Printing. It's Tom Frickin' Izzo is what it says in the front. It's a big seller, Gabe said. So if you want an opportunity to do that, it's real easy. Go to nudgeprinting.com/win. You enter your email address, and then he will be entered in the drawing. Free, cost you nothing. And then we'll announce the winner. I think it'll be the North Carolina game. So that'll be the last game of November. And then he's probably going to have a drawing the next month. So we're going to try something new. Also, just a quick reminder too, aside from all the great apparel at Nudge Printing, you can get, now, not a lot of people have wallpaper anymore, but Nudge Printing does. I bet you didn't know this, Rod. So if you want to if you want to get your own wallpaper, and by wallpaper, I mean the wallpaper on your phone. So if you want to get Michigan State wallpaper, really cool things, you can get them, download them at his website. So you just go to nudgeprinting.com/free. You can get, there are a bunch of different options. You can pick them all and just have it rotate through, but whatever you want, lots of different options for wallpaper. So head on over there. And if you want to buy something, more than free, you can do that. Of course, we have a new discount code. Final Four is going away. And so, because it's just too common now. So now it's going to be TIFNOTS. So TFFINOTS is your 20% off coupon code you enter in at checkout. All right. So the first key of the game is perimeter defense. And this is maybe not as much the threes as it probably is the penetration, which Michigan State I thought that was the one thing they did pretty well against Colgate.
Yeah, but this is the thing. I did not think they did a great job handling UConn. And
right,
Arkansas, I wouldn't say it's as skilled a perimeter group as UConn. They don't shoot it as well as UConn, but boy, do they have athletes. And they are I think their game plan, I would expect, is they're going to look to put Michigan State under pressure at the basket. And they're going to try to do that via a lot of penetration. Acuff can do that. Wagner can do that. We'll see about some of the other guys, but that's the part of Michigan State's defense right now that I'm concerned with. And as I've mentioned here before, it's not that I have a long-term concern like, can this team be good enough defensively by March? Right. It's where are they at right now?
Yeah.
I think they will evolve and they will get better because that's what history tells us happens. But right now, this has not, there's yet to be even a decently long segment, of like 5 minutes, 8 minutes,
right,
where I've thought they looked coherent and together defensively. Just guys are out of position. They're not connected, struggling sometimes with switches, maybe not playing ball screen defense the way Tom Izzo wants. He certainly said that coming out of the Colgate game. He didn't feel they did that. So that's my primary concern with perimeter defense. It's not the locating and closing on shooters as much as it is, can you keep these guys, Acuff and Wagner in particular, out of the lane?
Yeah. Do you feel like with Michigan State and their defense that it's more complicated defense that takes them a little longer to sort of get tuned up for the season than other teams that have good defensive efforts? Is that just because of the extra requirement of communication with the switching and stuff?
I think that has a lot to do with it. They play gaps coverage. So what that means is, I think a lot of fans tend to think about defense as one-on-one stuff. Can you guard your man? Well, that's part of it for sure. But you also at Michigan State, you have to be communicating at a high level. You have to handle those switches. You have to know when help is coming or when you're being expected to provide help. And the timing of that has to be right. There's a lot that goes into it. And I do think, again, history would tell us that it tends to take time for Michigan State teams to round into form defensively. Very rarely have we seen them. I was talking with Jack about this yesterday. I can remember, I have this memory of a game in Charlie Bell's senior year. I believe it was against Loyola of Chicago, who was not particularly good then. And I remember Charlie Bell having all kinds of problems keeping the guy he was guarding out of the lane. In a game MSU won, but it was frustrating to watch. That was a senior year Charlie Bell.
Yeah.
One of the best defenders MSU's ever had in his 4th year in the program. I remember at the time thinking nothing that's happened since has changed this at all, that it is hard. The hardest thing to maintain is that defensive continuity from where you left it off in March to when you start it back up in October.
Yeah.
I just don't think, and in those days, a good excuse was, well, you can't be coached in the summer.
Right.
Now they get a little bit of that, but it's still not enough. So I do think Michigan State's defense, there are some teams that play it in a much more simplified fashion, and it works for them. And maybe those teams are able to get it up to speed a little quicker. But I think when Michigan State does get it up to speed, you see what a difference it makes. But that's also a process that takes some time. Again, history teaches us that, because it's over different individuals, different groups. It's always that way, to varying degrees. It's always the same. So, yeah, but for this one, you just have to hope that they've made some progress.
Sure.
I will say this. Just one final thought on the defense. One thing that's good about this, we talked about it in the post game. Colgate runs good stuff.
Yes.
So does UConn too in that exhibition. Those are good, well-coached offensive teams. Arkansas will not run offense. It's anywhere near the level of those two teams. I just mean in terms of the complexity of it, the kind of actions you're being asked to guard. It's a lot more one-on-one, ISO, rely on athleticism to make a play. It's more of that. And as we used to see with Calipari teams, when that kind of player has it going well, it can be impossible to stop. But the challenge in terms of complexity is reduced from what we've seen in the last 2 games.
All right. So the second key to the game is the glass. Michigan State was dominant at the glass against Colgate, which you'd expect. They had almost a 50%. Well, was it over 50% offensive rebounding rate, I think?
I think it was. It was 54 or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Which my wife pointed out, well, that some of those were off free throws, but it doesn't matter. Anyway.
So that's even worse.
Well, yeah, right. It is. You're right.
Get.
It's actually worse. Yeah. Because I think they had at one point, they had one less offensive rebound than they did misses. But that's partly because they get free throws, which to your point, they are harder. Arkansas also rebounded well against Southern. Michigan State held Colgate to, I think, sub 10% for offensive rebounding rate.
10%.
Yep. 10%. And Arkansas was a 39% rebounding team. So they obviously are going to be a bigger challenge for Michigan State.
Yeah. Look, 39% offensive rebounding rate for them in the Southern game. We don't know what that means, really. Just as I would not say, hey, Michigan State's guaranteed to be among the elite of the elite on the glass this year because of what they did against Colgate. I do expect this is going to be a challenging game for both teams on the boards. Arkansas, we've seen going through their team, they've got some size. They got a lot of athleticism. They've got a lot of high motor guys. So on the defensive glass, it's going to be a challenge to keep those guys off the boards. Obviously, they did it at a high level against Southern. At the other end, look, I do think a team with Arkansas's general profile sometimes will have tendencies to try to look to make home run plays, look to make block shots, maybe not be as responsible defensively as they should, which could open up opportunities for MSU with second chances. So there's definitely a game where you want to see MSU continuing to do the job on the offensive glass as well. I think the defensive glass for MSU is going to be the bigger challenge.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
Certainly with a bunch of athletes like Arkansas has, it's always harder, I think, at the offensive end. So the third key to the game is the free throw line. We've now had 2 exhibition games and a regular season game. We've had not good free throw shooting. And especially from Cone Carr and Cam Ward has been the biggest culprits, I suppose. But even the other number of the other players have been like shooting 50% or like 1 or 2 or 2 or 4. With a game like this, you got to expect there's going to be a lot of contact, a lot of physicality.
The only guys the only guys you could be really happy with so far are Jeremy Fears and Jackson Kohler.
Right.
Everybody else, even like a guy like Cooper, who was really good, almost automatic at the end of last season, he hasn't shot well thus far. He's got to be better. Yeah. I look at this game, the types of teams these are, and I'm not going to be surprised if there are a good number of fouls. Both teams are athletic. They both want to force the issue on offense, and they both play with some physicality on defense. That usually will add up to a fair number of whistles. So it's reasonable to think this could be another game where MSU has got a good number of free throw attempts. They got to be much, much better than they've been so far at cashing them in. This kind of the level of performance they've had can't continue. They will lose games if it does because of that.
And the fourth key to the game is the transition game, obviously important for Michigan State, especially against a team like Arkansas. The more you can score easily, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, and that's always true. In a high-level game like this, you want as many easy chances as you're going to get. I don't think Arkansas is likely to be as full tilt a running team as Michigan State, but you can't have athletes like that and not have them look to push pace at times.
Right.
So I do think that's going to mean that there will be an opportunity to play the game in 94 feet at times. And Michigan State's got to cash in. Simple as that.
And fifth and final key to the game are the vets. This, of course, is referred to veterinarians. This is the veterans on the team.
Yeah, and you saw Tom Izzo in that post game after Colgate talking about how his veterans, other than Jeremy Fears, did not play well. Mm-hmm. So we're really talking about Cohen Carr, Jackson Kohler, Carson Cooper. I think none of those guys has been a disaster thus far. They've all had good moments. I actually think Jackson, defensively, there may have been some issues, but I think 16 and 15 in the opener is hard to
argue, yeah.
But, with Cohen, he was great against Bowling Green, and then the last two, he hasn't been as good. He hasn't been bad. He just hasn't been at the center of what was happening enough.
Yep.
For a guy who you think is your best player. And
yeah.
Carson Cooper, for a guy who I think last year was the best defensive big all around in the Big Ten, he hasn't been quite as sharp thus far. He's got to be better in ball screen coverage. So Izzo's asking a lot of those guys, and he's putting a lot on their shoulders, and with good reason. But I think it's hard to imagine MSU winning this game without all of those guys being significant parts of it. It's great that Cam Ward and Jordan Scott are showing signs of, being Izzo-type players as freshmen. That's fantastic. But you got to have the guys who have been through the war step up if you want to win games like this.
Right. All right. So wrapping up then, moving on, just a reminder, of course, to check out our sponsors, Brothers Just Your Gutters, Nudge Printing, and certainly enter that contest. There's also the Beat Rod contest. I've been getting a lot of entries now, so send yours in to me for free, Eric at tffinots.com. The final Big Ten standings 1 through 18 to Michigan State and the rest of the crew. And then also how many points Michigan State scores against Michigan will be the tiebreaker, and they do play twice, so put in the total points that Michigan State will score. So any final thoughts about this game?
What's that?
Oh, it's just any final thoughts about the game?
Oh, yeah, I think obviously high-level game, really good test. You're playing a team with a lot of good individual parts, a lot of athletic ability, some size. They've got some shooting, even though I don't think they're an elite shooting team. I think they can be a good one, especially the fact that their top two freshmen are both really good shooters, really good jump shooters. That's going to help. Mm-hmm. But I also think it's a game that Michigan State can win. I mean, they're at home. And you have to hope that that's going to have an impact, and that, maybe Arkansas still has some coherency stuff to work through, which would at least even the playing field in that regard, because we know Michigan State does as well. As long as Michigan State comes out of the gate playing with the kind of intensity that they need to. So in other words, not the last 28 or the first 28 minutes against UConn, but the last 12 or 13, I think they'll be in it all the way.
And you would not expect any rotation changes, or at least, well, I could
Not
probably rotation
yet.
changes. No starting changes, probably not for a
No,
while, like a couple
no.
games, unless someone really emerges
Tom
at this
Izzo
point.
historically has not been a guy to react that quickly.
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean, it was just Colgate. Yeah.
here's the thing too. Trey Fort could make this easy if he just came out and was lights out.
Yeah. Right.
He's shown signs for sure. I do think long term he's the better option for the heavier role at that position. But Trey Fort hasn't delivered a knockout punch yet. Maybe this is a game he can do that. It should be his kind of game. I mean, it's athletes getting up and down the floor, all that
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
It should play well to his strengths, but he's got to do that. If he comes out and he puts up 20 points and he hangs in there defensively, well, that might make the decision easier. But right now, even though I think his potential is greater and he shows more flashes, he hasn't yet delivered that clear, this is my position, I'm taking it kind of moment.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. All right. Well, we will, of course, be back live after the game. So about an hour and a half afterwards. So 10:30-ish or so. Make sure you're join us on YouTube or X or Instagram. I think I've got Instagram working. It's really not an easy platform to use, but join us and we'll be back. Or if there's any break news, we'll certainly be back before then. So I guess stay tuned. And just make sure, that's why it's make sure you subscribe to the show if you've not already. So until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go green.